Welcome back, everyone. Pastor Howie Maxson here, continuing our look through Revelation, the Apocalypse, the revelation of Jesus Christ, commonly known as the Book of Revelation. We come as we look at this second great vision where the Apostle John, the author, John the Revelator, as he is sometimes called, has been taken up in the Spirit into the throne room of God to see the worship that goes on there with 24 elders and angels and the four living creatures and the appearance of the Lamb who had been slain but standing there alive, which obviously represents Jesus. He is the Lamb of God. So remember that Revelation is all about Jesus. It's not about future events necessarily. It's not about earthly things, except that it's addressed to people who were really alive in 7 real churches in the first century, whether it's a little earlier, before 70 AD, or a little later, after 70 AD, is not that meaningless and not that great of a deal for us to figure out. But 7 churches filled with 7 real people who are facing multiple challenges. Challenges from without, persecution, challenges from within. And after that introduction and look at those 7 letters to those 7 churches, we see John taken up to the throne room of God, and here, the longest of the 4 visions, where we find the phrase that he was in the Spirit, taken up in the Spirit. We are in the midst of that long vision. The last 2 visions are much shorter, like the first vision was when he was taken up. He was in the Spirit on the Lord's Day. So we come to chapter 7, and we're going to break this one up into a couple of sections. The first section is titled by the New International Version of the Scriptures, 144,000 Sealed. And so, chapter 6, we saw the unsealing of the scroll. Now we see the sealing of this first group of people, the 144,000. And so this is what John saw and things that he heard. And again, we don't sweat the details. We just look at the overall vision. And you'll see a list in here of the tribes of Israel. It's a different list than you would see in the Old Testament of the tribes of Israel. And we'll touch on that one after I've read through this. So here we go. Chapter 7, verses 1 through 8. After this, that is, after the unsealing of the seals on the scroll, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth to prevent any wind from blowing on the land or on the sea or on any tree. 4 is a number that's repeated quite often in Revelation, and it stands basically for the world. We got 4 seasons. We have 4 cardinal points, the 4 corners of the earth: north, east, south, and west. And so here we see the 4 corners of the earth, angels standing at those 4 corners, holding back the 4 winds of the earth to prevent any wind from blowing on the land or on the sea or on any tree. Did you ever hear the term dead calm? Sometimes in the summer, especially, there's no wind, and it's just a dead calm. And sometimes it's referred to as the calm before the storm, because we're in a weather system that is in transition between one, maybe a high pressure system, low pressure system, dead calm. And it can be, especially if it's a hot, humid day or a hot, humid evening, it can be kind of oppressive and kind of cause us to be anxious. There are some people who are very reactive to something like this, changes in the weather. But here we have a depiction of dead calm all over the world. Dead calm, no wind. Remarkable. As remarkable as some of the really strong and destructive storms that we see. Dead calm. Verse 2, then I saw another angel coming up from the east, having the seal of the living God, that is the authorization seal. He called out in a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea. So the Lamb was given a scroll written within and without and sealed with 7 seals. We've seen the first opening of those 7 seals. The first 6 have been opened already. And only Christ was authorized to open. And only God is authorized to seal things. And so here an angel is given the seal of the living God to seal not just things, but people. And verse 3 says, the rest of verse 2 says, he called out in a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea, do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. That's a different term. And in this case, it's a different term than was used frequently in the Old Testament for the children of Israel. They were called the children of Israel predominantly, but Isaiah also refers to Israel as the servant of God. And part of God's judgment, as unfolded in the book of Isaiah, is that Israel as a nation, as a people, as the servant, collectively the servant of God, had failed their mission, which was to bring light to the Gentiles. And so God brought judgment, the Babylonian captivity, upon them. And then John tells us, because now we're going to get to the identity of those who are sealed in this section of chapter 7. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. And so then we have it enumerated. How many tribes of Israel were there? 12. And I think I stated when we looked at the vision in the throne room, there are 24 elders, 12 representing the Old Testament saints, 12 representing the New Testament saints, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles of the Lamb. So here we see John telling us that he saw this angel who had been given the seal of the living God, the authority to seal things or people, and he was given the authority and commission to seal 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes, 144,000. Now it's interesting and it's notable that in the first century, generally speaking, people did not have numbers that would be described like we have numbers that go beyond thousands. So we have thousands and then millions and then billions and trillions, and we all know those numbers, especially when we watch the news and see what's being spent by our government or taxed by our government. They didn't have a concept of a number beyond 1,000. So 1,000 was the highest that they had a number for. And so multiple thousands were always treated as multiple thousands. So from the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. So interesting, again, the number 12 appears, multiplied by 1,000. And so 12,000 appeared. By the way, 1,000 was the highest number. It was also a number that was a multiple of 10. 10 was, you got 10 fingers on each, or in both hands, 10 toes on your feet. We think of a baby and hearing the doctors tell the mother and the father and the maternity ward, well, he or she is just perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes. Perfect baby. And that's an old expression of perfection, and completeness. So we got 12,000. So we got the number 12 times 1,000. And so we have a symbolic number, perhaps, of that number 12, which was important to God, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles, multiplied by 1,000. So this is a number that represents a complete group of people, whoever they may be. And doesn't say men, doesn't say women. It simply says 144,000, which is 12 times 12. And when things are multiplied like that, it emphasizes something that is symbolic in apocalyptic literature. So from the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. From the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. From the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. From the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000. Now, if you compare this list of tribes with the lists in the Old Testament, it's different. And one of the reasons it's different is it leads with the tribe of Judah, who was not the firstborn, and tribe lists in the Old Testament don't start with Judah. But you may remember that in Jacob's promises and prophecy to his sons before he died in Egypt, he blessed the tribes and he prophesied about the tribes. And in prophesying about Judah, he spoke about the Messiah. And we know that prophecy to be a messianic prophecy. The scepter will not depart from Judah, and he will rule over his brothers. So that's different. Something else is different too. The tribe of Dan is missing, and the tribe of Ephraim is missing from this list. Why would that be? Well, historically in the Old Testament, Dan was a small tribe, but it was the first tribe to almost fully devote themselves to Baal worship and try to influence the other tribes. And it was almost wiped out completely as a result. And Ephraim is named in many of the Old Testament prophets, Isaiah, Hosea, etc., and identified as the leading tribe in rebelling against the rule of God. And so there were judgment prophecies against Ephraim that represented everybody who was rebelling against God and bringing Assyrian judgment upon the northern tribes, and even judgment upon ultimately upon Judah and Jerusalem, the Babylonians. And something else is different. Levi is listed here, and Levi was never listed in the tribes because Levi was the priestly tribe, and they were set apart. They weren't included, especially when the tribes were called forth to go to war. When they came to the promised land, they were listed, and Levi was set apart to deal with the tabernacle and its worship and the intercessions that were made and the sacrifices that were made. But Levi's listed, Ephraim the rebellious, and Dan, the more abominable tribe, I suppose, are missing. And in their place, we have Manasseh, who was one of the sons of Joseph, and then Joseph is mentioned. So Joseph is mentioned, not his rebellious descendant, Ephraim, but Manasseh is mentioned. Levi is in this list. Dan is not. And that may very well be significant in the sealing of those who are the servants of God. And what does that mean? Well, Paul talks about it in Ephesians. And in Ephesians, he talks about how we are sealed with the Holy Spirit, which is the promise of God's possession of us, if you will, of his acceptance of us. And so here we are seeing a picture of the Old Testament people of God, the children of Israel, being sealed, being protected, if you will, against all of the storms of life during this vision of a worldwide dead calm, no wind on the land or the trees or the seas. And so as we contemplate those things, let us also understand that we have a picture in the New Testament of Jesus calming a storm, sealing his disciples who were about to drown in a boat with his peace and his calm. And so we have a message of that. And that message is that as we are followers of Jesus Christ, whether Jewish followers of Christ or Gentile followers of Christ, we find ourselves in a world that is stormy, like this recent hurricane, Hurricane Ida, I forget the name of it, just went through Florida and up the east coast of the United States, very devastating, loss of life. But in the midst of that was an eye, the calm of the hurricane, the calm in the center of the eye, where technically there's almost no wind. There's that calm. And Jesus is our calm. Jesus is our peace in the midst of turmoil. Remember, never forget that the people that this letter was originally sent to were in the midst of turmoil from all kinds of different sides and even from inside. So in the turmoil of life, we find Jesus revealed to us in this revelation of Jesus Christ, and we see things like the calm, that we are sealed during that calm against the turmoil, storms, and all the other things we see in this world. So that's what I have for you today. May God bless you, and see you at the next video.